Hello, and welcome back to Just English Talk. It's me, Alex.
Eleanor.
And Marie.
And today we're talking about why it's so important that you, yes, you, read fiction.
And why is it so important that you read fiction?
Well, what do you think, Louis?
What do I think?
Yes. What do you think?
There's a lot of pointing here.
Yeah, sorry.
Very uncomfortable.
Very rude.
Put our fingers away. I would say that the reason it is so important, well, there are a lot of reasons. So I'm just going to start us off. I think that reading fiction makes you better with people. Mm-hmm. Ironically, you stick your head in a book, engaging less with the people around you, you end up better. And there's actually kind of research on this that people who read more tend to be more empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And to prove that wasn't just kind of a coincidence or one causing the other, you're more empathetic and therefore you read more about people. They have looked at people kind of before and after getting on a real reading kick, and you do become more empathetic, and it improves what we call the TOM, the theory of mind, which is this idea that I can't see inside Alex's head, right? But based on his behavior and how he interacts with me, I know that he has this entire inner working world just like I do. And that allows me to empathize with him rather than, when he cuts in front of me, when I want to, when I'm queuing for coffee, I'm not thinking this is just a violent outsider with no kind of material concept of what goes on in the real world. It's a person with an inner working world of his own.
Yeah.
And, maybe he just desperately needs the caffeine more than I do.
Yeah. So it's that sort of adage of walking a mile in someone else's shoes, and that's what you're doing, is you're walking a day or 60 years in someone else's shoe over the course of a book.
Yeah.
It's a book's worth of time.
Absolutely.
100 pages.
It's not easy.
No.
It's
not easy to read.
Is the reason why I think it's so important.
See.
Yeah. And look, I think that there are a lot of conversations right now about attention span and our kind of intense digital world and things demanding your attention. And it is true that it is easier to just watch TV or go to the cinema or doom scroll, your Instagram page, right? Of course, I love doing that stuff too. But reading is hard, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I think that every single time you read now a piece of fiction, it's almost like the act is subversive in a way. You're pushing back against a system that is saying no, like there's no stop, do this.
Yeah.
It's this idea of currently with technology, etc., we're in this time of passivity, right? Everything is done for us, everything is thought for us, everything is curated for us, presented to us, and all we have to do is absorb it. Whereas with reading, even though you're not doing anything, you're sitting in a chair almost entirely still, you are actually engaged in an active pastime. And you're having to engage actively and continuously with something for an extended period of time, which is why it feels different if you spend half an hour reading than when you spend half an hour on a phone. Because if you spend half an hour on a phone, if you're like me, you don't remember anything that you've actually looked at. Nothing has sort of broken through into your long-term memory because you haven't done anything with the information you're being presented. You're just spending your time sitting, experiencing it, as opposed to actively putting yourself, as we said, into that empathetic space, into that active space, and you are making yourself engage with that content.
So it's hard and it's subversive. So why would we bother? What are the outcomes other than just being a better person or a more empathetic person? They're not actually the same thing. I shouldn't say that. But other than that obvious benefit, what benefits are we getting?
You're going to learn something quite often. You might learn something about a time period or a group of people or a situation that you have not encountered yourself. So I would say that's number one.
You'll develop your imagination as well. And people in every sphere of life, most successful people, I would say, part of their spirit of innovation is that they have an imagination to think about things that don't currently exist, or solutions to problems now that they're able to think about and project their ideas into the future, or into a realm in which they don't exist right now, which is something that particularly fiction does allow, because you're forced to not only accept the world you're in, the limits of it, but break through them.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty well established by now that one of the things that makes us unique as a species is our ability to do that with imagination. So like they always talk about kind of like early on in human development, if there's an unknown threat to a settlement, you can't just say, you can't refer to it by a given name, a given signifier. You have to describe it. And so you go, well, you know pink, right? Yeah, that color. And you know elephants, yeah? It's a pink elephant. Now, you've never seen one, but suddenly in your head, you're able to do that. And that's a uniquely human trait, the ability to do that. And what that tells us is that we are built to imagine. We are designed for storytelling. And there is no better way, in my opinion, of teaching someone something than by telling a story to do it. And that, I think, is kind of part of the heart of this question. Like, you can learn so much. I mean, Elle, you mentioned walking a mile in someone's shoes, that great idiom. There's another great idiom, which is standing on the shoulders of giants, which is this idea that you're only able to progress thinking beyond a certain point when you've done all of the foundation thinking. Everyone who has thought and expressed things before, you read all of that, you're standing on it, you can take things further, you can be a trailblazer, you can change the world, but you're not going to do that unless you've already done that groundwork.
Right. And also, if on a more day-to-day basis, you can also think, oh my goodness, it's not just me who thinks, feels, experiences this. I am not alone in this very confusing vortex of the human condition.
And from that, you're engaging with another human being who may well still be alive or is not, and it's a tribute in some ways to them, especially if they've passed on, if they're not around anymore. You're keeping them alive.
Legacy, right?
It's their legacy, and you're engaging with that. They might also be reminding you that, the things that you're experiencing are not new things. Like, we've been going through these for generations, right? And so actually you're holding hands with the past, right? And creating this link of storytelling, which storytelling, is, as you've already kind of touched on, Louis, it's a fundamental and also transcendental part of being human, right? So it may seem silly that you pick up, a book, any book, it doesn't have to be a great work, just anything that someone has spent the time to sit down and written and has been published and is in your hands. That's just an incredible thing. So, that's why I, firmly believe in it.
Yeah, particularly, and as we are currently in London, thinking about so many writers across hundreds and even at this point thousands of years have written about the experience of being in London, walking through London, a morning in London, people in London, and to metaphorically be holding hands with that link and chain of people stemming from the first people to walk London streets, and be able to share that common experience with them. And that is one very small experience of many that people write about, where we are actually holding hands and saying, well, this is something that we are sharing. And this experience of not only feeling this way, but also reading these same words about this is a really powerful part of humanity, I would say, as well. Connection.
So I think before we started recording, we were thinking about ways that we can read more fiction. And I think one of the things that you said that really stood out to me was just as simple as libraries. And as you were saying that, I was also just thinking about why a library is such a great thing, alongside it simply being a place that's full of books, so it's, your local library, get down there and help. But just that is a thing that exists. Like, essentially, I know that libraries have other functions in society these days as well, but like, you know, on its very simple place, it's a place that you can go in and just get a different view of life, you know. And I mean, I don't have anything to back this up, but I would imagine that if you wanted to stop people maybe connecting with others or feeling empathy, or, you know, sort of we're trying to marginalize, a good place to start would be to close down libraries, because, you know, that might be the kind of place where you might go in and suddenly realize, actually, the person that they're telling me to, you know, stick the thumb on is actually not really that different to me, you know, and actually is actually much closer than they're telling you. Wait a minute, what is this? So they have a kind of, and, you know, that's as well why I use that word, subversive, because they do have a political power, you know, fiction, just to make us think in a different way.
Hugely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think kind of tangentially on that, when you've got these thinkers with these unusual ideas or these dissenting ideas and this kind of political weight, what's worth remembering is if it's made it into a library, like if it's made it through drafting,
Yeah.
cool. If it's made it through editing, cool. If it's made it to a publisher, cool. If it's been published, cool. If it's survived the test of time, right, then it is good, right? It is, you know, these are good ideas, and the fact that they have been preserved in itself, amazing. The fact that you can then access this enormous repository of kind of information and ideas and concepts is an enormous gift that I think people should be kind of taking advantage of. And I just think that, like, if there's someone like, we can have amazing conversations with the people that we know and love, but I have gained more groundbreaking insights on the whole from literature than I have from these kind of really interesting, deep, meaningful conversations. Obviously, you need both in life if you want to understand people, but this kind of distilled version of things. And it always makes me think of, or recently has made me think of, this advice that I was given in an audience, and I've told you guys about it before, about reading more books by women. And kind of the rationale behind that was, if you want to understand this experience, rather than burdening your friends with this kind of, can you explain to me why you feel this way living as a woman, Elle? Can you give me 17 hours just to talk about, you know, puberty? Like, instead of doing that, I can read some of the best thinking that has been done on the topic, distilled into the most expressive and communicative way, and has stood the test of time, but, you know, rising above all of the others. I just think it's amazing. It's
exactly when and why literature becomes powerful, isn't it? Because that is what starts to disappear in somewhere like a totalitarian regime, or somewhere where politics or society is trying to restrict empathy and trying to control understanding and interrelations, is when book burning and censorship takes place, because that understanding, that community between people developed through literature, and particularly fiction, being able to understand others, it becomes dangerous and, as Alex said, subversive content. It's subversive to be a community in a place that fears rebellion.
Like if you
independent thinking.
If you really want to control a population, then you take away two things. You take away birth control, and you take away books. If you take away those two things, then your society is in your hands, essentially. People are entirely beholden to you.
Don't forget the Beatles also. You take away the Beatles, because they, for some reason, still seem to be quite subversive. But it's that kind of thing. It is that kind of thing. Like, I'm being somewhat facetious, but, like, you know, once you start to get into the reading of fiction, and particularly with great works, you'll start to notice references to other aspects of culture, other aspects of art. You know, it's a gateway drug, you know, to use a kind of metaphor, into a wider kind of world. And I think I've said this before on the podcast about why it's important that you study fiction, you know, just to not go on too much of a tangential thing. But quite often in state schools, you know, there will be students, the only time you get to access books is in your English lessons, right? And the only time you get to read them from cover to cover is in your English lessons. we just do our best to make sure that that is a decent spread of at least the kind of stepping stone texts, right? Hopefully what that then inspires, like if you are in a household that doesn't have books, or you are in a household that doesn't value reading, you can, right? Like, you know, that is, you can take the inspiration from the books that you read. So, you know, like in Christmas Carol, Scrooge is reading Robinson Crusoe, you know, like that might be an opportunity. You go, oh, that's another book. What's that book, right? And all of these things start to build into something much bigger and bigger and bigger. So, you know, like when you're a very small child, stories are stories. They're so interesting. Oh, you know, it's Peter Rabbit, or you know, it's Angry Arthur, and they're kind of these imaginative worlds. And then hopefully what happens as you grow, you start to realize that it's more than just the stories, right? It's the kind of connection that you're building with other people. And yeah, I just think that a world without fiction would be very sad, very bleak, a bleak house, if you will.
It'd be hard times. Hey,
I've been wanting to use that button.
And so obviously reading fiction is important, but it's also nice, right? It's also really, really kind of enjoyable to do, and that's, you know, we still do it.
I'm gonna let you use that word, nice
Nice
for now, just because it is nice.
Sometimes things are just nice.
Yeah.
We don't need to. Yeah.
And
but-
sometimes a sentence will either just sweep you off your feet, or it will knock the breath out of you in terms of its sheer beauty or its pure power.
Or wrap you up in a warm blanket and provide comfort to you. Like it's this kind of emotional world that you can access. And Elle, you were saying that you've recently read all of the Akatar books, or like 5 or 6 or something.
Well, just devouring a series and spending time with characters.
Because most people would say, you know, well, that's not very literary of you, Elle. And so you're doing something beyond just being kind of...
That's not very literary of you.
Thank you, Alex.
And not everything has to be literary.
Exactly.
It could also just be fun. And what was really fun was reading those with people and then being able to talk about them in the way you would about anything, but you're then talking about literature. And it's so exciting. It's so much fun to, particularly with its people you know, friends, family, etc., to have them be doing the same thing as you, and then to be able to convene and say, have you got to this part yet? What do you think of this? Because it really does reveal so much about people you think you know really well. To know what their impression is of this character. It's like
incredibly intimate, isn't it? Sharing.
So intimate.
It's also, it's epic when actually someone does read a book that you've recommended.
Even more intimate, swapping them and doing that and reporting
beautiful.
back and taking someone's suggestion. And then again, you get this little extra piece to the puzzle of that person, which always makes me think of, and I wrote it down because it's one of my favorite quotes by Rudine Sims Bishop, educator, an amazing sort of academic, saying that fiction provides mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors into other people's experiences. So it reflects with a mirror your own experiences, and you're able to see them in a different light. It gives you a window into someone else's experience, so you're able to see someone else's life and walk in their shoes. But then this sliding glass door of then you are entering into their world, whether that's in a world building concept, in a fantasy planet, etc., or if that's just a completely different experience to you, as in the way we were talking about feminist writers, and that being a different experience than your own, and thus you're able to engage with it and then thus perhaps empathize or understand it on a different level.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I actually really like a lot of what comes from BookTok. And I think it's quite a controversial one. A lot of people will call it kind of like anti-intellectualism to go use to go. I understand this perspective to go, look, these are the books that you should read, and therefore that's going to curtail your own kind of flexibility and kind of your own kind of independence when it comes to books. But when it comes to community building, if you're doing your kind of independent reading, but you're also doing books as part of a book club, or because something's trending on BookTok, or in order to have a conversation with people and share your books, it's building a community, bringing you closer to people, which starting off this conversation, I said, you put your head in a book. Are you turning away from people? Evidently
You're
not.
turning towards them. And also, at a certain point, even though we have talked about the difference between literature, capital L, and books and novels, etc., reading is reading. Whatever reading you're doing is practicing those skills, is building your imagination, is teaching you something, even if it's a new vocab word, a new perspective, etc. It might not be the most philosophical or esoteric idea in the world, but it's something engaging and helps you develop your love and knowledge of reading and books. And that is always good.
Makes me want to just go away and read a book now.
That's what
I think we might.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.